welcome to week 1. Super excited to be getting started on the right foot or the left foot, whatever. We're going to get started on both feet because today we're talking about posture. All right. Why is posture so important? So, posture is one of the main reasons that our injuries become compounded. Let me explain. Standing, sitting, the way we move about our day-to-day tasks influences the way that we move in the gym and the way that our body interacts with itself, right? So these patterns, these habits that we curate day in, day out, the way that we get out of cars, the way we get out of bed, the way we stand at the table, the way that we do our dishes, the way that we get up and down off the ground, all of these facets of life compound to build chronic inflammation or rubbing of the joints, arthritis, or a chronic overuse of a certain joint. And so that's why so often we see injuries happen in those moments, right? It's always, I threw my back out getting up off the couch. It's never, I threw my back out going to the gym on my regular day, right? So that's why it's important to start with posture, because the minute that we start changing our posture, the minute that we start becoming more aware of how we move through our day. So a lot of the exercises that we'll be going through are going to be working on correcting our posture. They're going to be working on building more awareness on how our body interacts with itself, how our shoulders interact with our hips and how our feet interact with our shoulders, and all of this lineage and this holistic method that a lot of people just simply disregard because that's what we're taught. We're taught that if the shoulder hurts, we fix the shoulder. We don't think about how the shoulder is reacting to, the mid-back or the hips or the core. So that's why posture is important, not only for our physical health, but also for our mental health. Okay, if you're constantly slouching and you're, sitting like this and your head's forward and you're looking down all the time, it's going to start to weigh on you. Quite literally, gravity is weighing on you, right? And so that's part of the reason that it's hard to stand in good posture. And if you're not actively working on it, then gravity is going to weigh you down, right? We need to be strong enough to hold ourselves up against gravity. And when we are strong enough to do that, we also gain more self-esteem. We gain more confidence. We feel better. We look better in clothes, which makes us feel better, right? I've had clients that we start working on their posture and they start getting compliments. Oh, you look good. Have you lost weight? The numbers are the same on their scale. They just stand with more pizzazz, with more charisma, with more confidence, and with more strength, you know what I mean? And when you start standing better, you start walking better, you start moving better, you start realizing, you start seeing the world better, right? So this is why posture is so important, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally, right? So I hope that you can understand the importance of starting to pay attention to how you move through your day-to-day, right? If I was here working with you in person, we would absolutely have a day where I just follow you around the house and we do chores. And I point out how your hips are sticking out and how your shoulders are hunched forward and how your neck is cocked to the left, as you do these exercises, right? And by bringing that awareness to you, we allow you to make changes in the moment, in real time. So, what are some key facets when it comes to our posture, all right? Well, it's really important to understand that how the anatomy works, right? So when we are standing up nice and tall, our skeleton and our musculature So our skeleton is made to support us. Our muscles support our skeleton. And we need to make sure that our skeleton is fully stacked. This is a term called joint stacking, okay? So it doesn't matter what you're doing in your exercise. If you're ever like, I wonder if I'm doing it in the right form, think about stacking, okay? And I'm gonna go a little bit further into that. But before I do, I want to talk about where our center of gravity is and why that's important. Our center of gravity is happening somewhere in our core. For men, it's a little bit higher up. For women, it's a little bit lower down, okay? And so that's a really important thing to take note of and to remember when you're doing more dynamic movements like the squat and the deadlift or hip hinge, and we want to have an awareness of that before we even start doing those things, because this is where our balance comes into play. And balance is often a big crux for people that struggle with their posture, that don't understand joint stacking. Okay, so here we go. We're going to talk about joint stacking. I'm going to show you what it looks like, okay? So when we look at our bodies, we can divide ourselves down the midline, right? Creating right side and left side. We can also divide ourselves down through the side of our body, creating front and back, right? And so this is where I want to focus, because when it comes to checking your own posture in the mirror, you're going to be focusing on your forward view, and then you're going to be focusing on your side view. And we'll go over that in a moment. I want to begin with the side view. So when we're thinking about joint stacking, we're thinking about ankle over knee, knee over, let me start that again. Ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over knee, knee over ankle. Okay, so we're going to test me out here really quickly. And so when you stand, you should be fully stacked, and you can feel it. It's like, it sort of feels like everything just clicks right into place. If you've ever done a puzzle, it's that feeling of like when you find the right piece and it just fits. That's how it should feel in your body. Now, not everybody's going to be here right away, and that's okay, right? That's why we're learning this, because these exercises are going to help us get to a place where we can learn to tuck our hips, maybe if we're sticking our butts out, or maybe we're rounding in the shoulders quite a bit, and now we've got this kind of very rounded back, or what we call kyphosis, right? So how do we get the muscle structure? How do we get the mobility to be able to open up and find that stack, right? That's what we're here to learn. But this is what we want. So when you're checking yourself out in the mirror, or if you're taking a photo of yourself, which is what I would recommend, is to stand nice and tall, set your phone up, on like a tripod or on a table or something that will allow it to be center with you, and then you'll just turn to the side, snap a photo. Turn to the front, snap a photo. Turn to the other side, snap a photo, right? And so there's a couple of things that we're looking for. When we come to the front, we're checking to make sure that our shoulders and our hips are square. Now, this is another tenet of stacking that's a little bit less intuitive than the stacking we just went over from the side view, because a lot of us are one side dominant, meaning we go more to the right or more to the left. What that's going to create over time, and especially I've noticed with a lot of my athletes, if they're not training both sides evenly, they're going to have a twist, right? And sometimes that means the shoulders are going to twist and the hips are going to twist the other way. Sometimes both things twist the same way. Sometimes it's just the hips. Sometimes it's just the shoulders. And, right, myself included, before I started my program and really looking into all of this, I was terribly twisted, right? And sometimes this twist is a little challenging to find just by looking yourself in the mirror, just by getting a photo. So what I would recommend is, first and foremost, to check to make sure that your shoulders and your iliac crest, or those hip bones, are on top of each other, right? This is something that we're going to talk about. They create a square. We're going to talk about this a lot. This is going to be how you're checking your form and making sure that we're staying in this range of motion. So making sure that that is a square, all right? The other way that you can do it is you can bring your hands to your shoulders, or to your hips, excuse me. You can bring your hands out, fingers out, whatever, and then you just gently walk towards the wall. And as you get towards the wall, you might notice that your right finger goes a little bit forward, more forward than your left finger, right? So that's going to be a sign that you've got a twist in your hips. Similarly with the shoulders, this one's a little bit more challenging. You might need, maybe you ask somebody to help you out to see if your shoulders are twisted. Sometimes this one's a little bit easier to see from the side because it'll look something like that. So that's another area that we're paying attention to, right? The stacking of the shoulders and the hips, and then the stacking of the ears over the shoulders over the hips over the knees, and the knees over the ankle. A couple of things to look at when you're assessing your posture. We're going to start from the feet up, all right? So first and foremost, when you look at your stance, are your feet even or are they staggered? Okay, that's going to make a difference. Are your feet both facing forward or is one twisted out? Are both twisted in? Are both twisted out? How much are they twisted out? No, right? 10 to 30 degrees is okay. That's kind of the safe space. Getting out to that 30-degree mark, though, can start to indicate imbalance. So I like to keep it in that 10-degree space, especially as when we're starting out, and then we can start to gain strength in more of that external rotation. So that's the feet. We also want to pay attention to if they're internally rotated or externally rotated, right? I'm sorry, that's not internal or external. That's pronation and supination. So do they come in or do they come out, right? What do we have going on there? Next thing we want to look at is our knees. Do they come in or do they go out? Are our legs bowed? Mine are bowed, right? These are just going to be points to pay attention to, all right? Next thing, as we move up into the hips, we're taking note of what's going on here. So you might notice that one side likes to cock out, meaning that you've got a little bit of a hip shift, right? The other thing that we're focusing on when we come to the side view is, are our hips anteriorly tilted, meaning the tailbone is out? Our noodles from our pelvic bowl are spilling forward, anterior. This means anterior tilt, right? Or we go backwards and we're kind of tucked like this, meaning that the noodles in our pelvic bowl are spilling behind us, right? So these are two places that we want to focus on in addition to checking that twist from the front view. All right. When it comes to your spine, there's a couple of things that we want to focus on. You can notice when you're in your side view, do you have a severe lordosis, meaning you're very arched down here, lots of compression in that low back, not what we want. Okay. Another thing that we want to focus on is any rounding in the shoulders, kyphosis, right? Also not what we want. Are we kind of stuck in this position? Are we stuck in this position? Are we stuck in something like this? Which, believe it or not, I've seen. So these are all areas that we can start to see imbalances and strengths, right? Weaknesses, strengths, imbalances, places to improve upon. Moving on, when we go up to our shoulders, we're looking to test the shoulders. You're going to look at what's going on with if one shoulder is taller than the other, right? So something like this or like this, right? Then we'd also kind of want to check in on what's going on down here. Do we find our rib cage going out to the side a little bit? Are we kind of leaning in this direction, showing us that our obliques are a little too tight? Areas to focus on. Another place when it comes to our shoulders to pay attention to is what our hands are doing. Do our thumbs face forward or do the tops of our hands face forward? This can indicate a rotation from the humerus, which is going to be a rotation from the humerus into the glenohumeral joint, which is your shoulder joint. So you're going to be rotated in, and that's going to take another set of exercises for the external rotators to open us back up, maybe doing some release of the chest, right? That could be indicating or contributing to a rounding of the shoulders, right? The last thing that we want to focus on is going to be what our neck is doing. Are our ears over our shoulders? So most people are like this, all right? It's a lot of tension on the neck. So bringing it back is going to be the work that we have to do, right? Also, some people have a little cock in their head here and there. Some people like to look down. Some people, kind of stay a little bit up here. So just paying attention to, anything that seems abnormal from those two major principles of joint stacking. The ears over shoulders, over hips, over knees, over ankles, and the square in our hips to our shoulders, right? And I guess something I didn't bring up with this, we talked about the twist, but I didn't talk about the uneven, slide or the uneven shift of those hips this way, right? So that's also not a square, right? That's an irregular polygon called a trapezoid. We don't want that. We want square rectangle happening in our core. And the last tenet that I want to talk about with the introduction to posture is the three major points of our pillar that we're going to be working on when it comes to our posture, okay? It's going to be our glutes, our core, and not just those six-pack muscles that everybody loves. I'm talking deep core, I'm talking pelvic floor, diaphragm, right? I'm talking the whole thing. And then I'm talking thoracic spine, right? These muscles back here. Your lats, your rhomboids, your tres minor, all of this good stuff that creates your external rotators, right? That's all very important. So those are the three parts of the body that create kind of a triangle to help hold you in the right posture. And those are going to be the areas that we're going to be focusing on, amongst other things. But those are going to be big tenets and big and pillars of creating our pillar, right? Tenets to create our pillar. Cool. If you've got any questions about any of that, I highly suggest that you chat about it in the group on Facebook. I would love to answer any questions. Maybe there's other people that can also help answer them for you. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing your progress.